to explore rhetoric with Space Cat. Alright, what's the deal with Space Cat? Just to give you a rundown, Space Cat is a tool that we use to do rhetorical analysis. And by rhetorical analysis or rhetorical effect, basically what we mean by that is just how to analyze and consider how something hits you, how well, how effectively, is it boring, is it powerful, things like that. And Space Cat is a mnemonic device. That means that each letter stands for another word. And so I'm going to go through all of those. First is speaker. So that's kind of obvious. However, it's not always as obvious as you think. If it's a TED Talk, yes, you can see the speaker. But if somebody writes an article, then the speaker is actually a writer. Or if it's an advertisement, a commercial or something like that, then we might not know the specific person who wrote it. So it might be a business, a government organization, something like that, right? A Nike commercial, you might not know who or which individuals wrote that, but we would say that the speaker would be like, say, the company Nike. So what do we know about them? What do we not know about them? Does this text have a particular meaning because of who wrote it or said it? All right. Next is purpose. So I like to think of purpose like PIE. So PIE stands for persuade, inform, and entertain. And we will try to keep it like that. You can see that there's other examples on here because I didn't make all this slideshow. I found this resource. But PIE, persuade, meaning like to try to convince someone to buy something, to believe something, whatever, to do something. That's P for PIE. P of PIE. I is inform. So information, education, like reporting, things like that. Okay. And then E is entertain. So entertain could be funny, it could be just action, but if the main purpose of something, maybe it's a cartoon, maybe it's a really just kind of like light movie, maybe it's a TikTok video, maybe it's a meme. Its main purpose is not to persuade you, is not to inform you or educate you. The main purpose of it is to entertain. All right. So purpose is like why is this thing being made? Next is audience. So audience is the other part of who. Speaker is who is putting this thing out there into the world. Audience is who is it intended to reach, right? Like, for example, you might sometimes watch something at a certain time of day and you're seeing maybe you have seen a commercial for something that's a product for helping older people to stay healthy, right? You're not the audience. Older people are the audience. So you're thinking about who the actual or the intended audience is. And then what did the speaker assume about their audience? By that assumption, I mean like, what do they assume that that their audience knows? What do they assume that their audience cares about? And how can you tell? Right? Like if a commercial says like 6 out of 7 doctors agree that this is the best product, then maybe the speaker is assuming that, like people who are concerned about their health would be interested in that. All right. Context. This word comes up in history class. It comes up in Spanish. Context. Con the text. So context is when and where. Like when was this produced? Like date, day, even if you can get super specific. Where was it produced? Like country or even down to the city, if that matters, if that is relevant. How is it intended to be displayed or distributed? What are the biggest issues on the speaker's mind? So all of that, like what do we need to know to be able to appreciate and understand this work? Exigence. All right, now this one is tricky, so I'll spend more than 30 seconds on it. Why now? All right, another way to think about this is like, you might not know like what's the now for the speaker, depending on what kind of text, what kind of artifact it is. But I want us to think of exigence as necessity or mattering. Like, why bother? All right, like, for example, like, why bother learning about Plato's allegory of the cave? Why does it matter, right? That's something to consider with exigence. Like it says here, the Me Too movement that took off after there were some high-profile reports of like sexual misconduct. All right, so now we're on to choices, appeals, and tone. So just so you know, the first part go together: speaker, purpose, audience, context, exigence. That is basically all like background info. These are things that you can think about, that you could report to each other about, potentially, to help somebody to understand and appreciate any kind of text, whether it be a video, a podcast, an article, a meme, whatever. Okay? Now the cat part, that is when we are going to get more analytical. So for space, speaker, purpose, audience, context, exigence. Exigence is a little bit deep thinking, but a lot of these are like you could just kind of like research. You could Google like who the speaker is. A purpose should be clear. Choices, appeals, and tone. This is where we get into a little bit deeper thinking. All right. So choices is a category of all the little moves authors make to enrich their writing or to enrich their video, depending on what kind of content it is, whether it be a speech, an article, whatever, a report. Why does a writer make each choice? And some of the kind of choices that we're referring to here is like diction. That's like word choice specifically. Like, why do they use the words that they do? Sentence structure, organization, layout, color, figures of speech. So very specific communication choices. If it's a video of a speech like a TED Talk and a person uses movement in a certain way or changes their voice in a certain way, why did they make that choice? All right, next is appeals, and we're going to dig more into this in your assigned reading on understanding rhetoric, why rhetoric, and ethics, emotion, and logic or reason are also expressed as ethos, pathos, and logos. Those are all Greek words. So these appeals, again, are over 2,000 years old the way that we're studying them right now. Appeals are basically strategies. So if somebody is trying to be persuasive, like, how are they doing that? How are they getting someone to want to believe them? How are they using emotion to motivate them to action or to belief? And then how are they using logic to make a reasonable argument, right? Over and over again, we've said all year, any of your opinions are valid. Any of the claims you want to make about anything that we have read or watched in class, totally valid and great, as long as you reason using evidence. And that's what logos is. All right, and then finally, tone. So, what is the speaker's attitude at different places throughout the text or talk? Text, okay, so just remember whenever we're referring to text, it may be something written, it may be spoken, it may be like a visual image thing, but we're just kind of using text as just kind of anything. How can you tell that this is their attitude? Where does the tone shift in the piece? If it does, right? So tone, right, those are words that have to do with feelings. Like a tone could be positive, a tone could be negative, or it could be kind of neutral. Is it happy? Is it serious? Is it lighthearted? Is it furious? Is it wrathful? Is it playful? Right, so tone. So here's an example. A religious eulogy may begin with a mournful tone, sad tone, then move into a comforting or inspirational one. Logos, that has to do with words, right? So eulogy, kind of like euphemism. A A eulogy is a speech that's given at a funeral where you say good things about the person who has passed away, to use a euphemism. And so it might start out sad and then kind of move into a happier key, so to speak. Right? So when do you use this? How are we going to use this? Rhetorical analysis requires you to read and understand what matters about a text, right? So that's the space part, and comment on what specific features make it rich, make it interesting, make it effective. That's the cat part.
Don't panic when exploring a new or difficult text. Space Cat will guide you into the